Our Old Testament reading is from the book of Exodus, chapter 16, verses 1 through 15. The whole congregation of the Israelites set out from Elim and came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had departed from the land of Egypt. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I'm going to rain bread from heaven for you, and each day the people shall go out and gather enough for that day. In that way I will test them, whether they will follow my instruction or not. On the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on other days." So Moses and Aaron said to all the Israelites, "In the evening you shall know that it was the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you shall see the glory of the Lord, because he has heard your complaining against the Lord. For what are we that you complain against us?" And Moses said, "When the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and your fill of bread in the morning, because the Lord has heard the complaining that you utter against him, what are we? Your complaining is not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, 'Draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining.'" And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall have your fill of bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God." In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat." The grass withers, the flowers fade, but the word of God stands forever.
Please join me in a word of prayer. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, for you, O God, are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So last week, I told the story of Moses encountering God at the burning bush, and God gave Moses a vision of a promised land flowing with milk and honey. The only thing is, Moses had no capacity. He had nothing inside or outside, no wherewithal to make this happen. So God gave Moses a stick, a staff, and that staff was enough. It brought the king of Egypt to his knees and defeated an army at the Red Sea. So we came to conclude that God does amazing things through human beings that seem weak and incapable and without many resources, and yet it happened. So the story continues, and here we are in the middle of the desert, and things are looking pretty bleak already. And we have the Israelites probably running out of any kind of bread that they had that they brought with them from Egypt and thinking, oh no, we've done it. There's nothing left. We have a huge desert to wander through. Don't know how long it's going to take, and we're going to just die here. And they start complaining to Moses. They start complaining, at least in Egypt, we were slaves, we were beaten, we were oppressed, everything was horrible, but we had something to eat at least. You're just bringing us out here to die. We got nothing. I've talked with a lot of people about this passage. And a little bit in this passage, more in other passages, you have the inevitable fact of Israelites complaining. In fact, the word complaining just keeps coming over again and again and again in this passage. There's so much complaining that I get sick of their complaining and I didn't have to hear them. But then the complaining keeps continuing as they go even further through the desert, and there are times when God just had it and judges and points his finger and condemns them, and some die, and there's a lot of judgment, and people come up to me and say, I thought we served a loving God. And I think, wow, where is that loving God here as well? I feel bad for Moses and Aaron as middlemen there. They tried to say, this is a God thing, don't complain to us. And we'll pass on your complaints to the big guy, but, So they're kind of frazzled too. But when I talk to people about this passage, we think, okay, you're in the middle of a huge barren desert. There's no food. What are you going to do? How would you react? Would you freak out? Would you? Yeah, absolutely. You would let your fears and anxieties take over, and you would be forgetting all the whips and chains and the horrible things about slavery and moving huge pillars for Pharaoh and all that other stuff. You would forget all the bad times, and you think, well, at least I had something to eat. Now, it's very interesting when we did Bible study this morning. A lot of times we talk a lot about, well, did this really happen? Did God really do this? And the wandering through the desert, why 40 years, and what was manna really like, and stuff like that. But what I really like about this, and so many important passages in the Bible, which this is huge, is it says so much about who we are as people, and has done for centuries, ever since it was written. It has so much to say about our lives of faith and about our lives in general. And one of the things I think this story brings out so well is the fact that when you're stuck in a system where there's a status quo, and even if the status quo in the system, which could be a family, could be an organization, could be your company, could be a church, it could be a town, but however miserable and harsh your life is in that community, you would rather maintain the status quo and be miserable than change. It takes something really radical to get you out of that situation. And it took an absolute miracle on the part of God to get those Israelites out of slavery. It took the staff to do all sorts of plagues and part Red Seas and all this sort of stuff to release the Hebrew slaves. And finally, we get out of the situation. A major crisis or some event in life gets us out of the horrible status quo that we were in. And we move through this desert time, this nebulous time, this liminal time where we're neither here and we're neither there. We have this powerful, clear vision of the promised land in front of us, and we have slavery in back of us, and we're walking, and all of a sudden we realize, oh, we don't have anything to eat. The resources are not there. And our anxiety perks up, and we say, the days of slavery are so much more preferable. You know, the old ways, the old ways of doing things, the things, the life that didn't work and that was draining us, that was not hopeful, at least we know what those days were like, and they were comfortable because we knew what was happening. We so want to go back there. So want to go back there. It's so easy for us to slip into old habits, to do things the old way. This year, we are going to get a vision of the promised land, whatever land of milk and honey that is. We're going to get that vision from God. And that vision will not be a magic wand. I guarantee you. It will be a compelling, exciting, wonderful vision, but we won't instantly say, yes, let's go to that land. It's so wonderful. Let's leave all that behind. Let's go. No. It's going to be a desert wandering. It will involve, and has already involved, choices that are hard, letting go of certain things, grieving things. And as we will go through this, we will say, but the land of Egypt, at least we had bread. At least we knew, at least we had all this stuff. The hard things in Egypt will kind of suddenly fade away, and we'll have these fuzzy kind of sense of nostalgia about the land of Egypt, our land of Egypt. And that harsh reality of the desert will make us freak out enough so that that vision of that promised land that was so exciting to begin with just fades from our sight. In those times, we will need a Moses and an Aaron to step up for us. We will need people to get us to step one more step through the desert. We will need what one of my mentors called people who will both encourage and will call us to be accountable. In his point of view, a big part of what church is about for mutual encouragement and accountability. Yes, we will need the people to say, oh, yes, it's hard, isn't it? It's hard, I understand, but can you just take one step further? There will be times when encouragement is needed. There's also going to be times when accountability is needed. There will be times when we have to hear the word from somebody in our congregation to say, look, Egypt was a land of slavery. It was horrible. Anyway, the Red Sea got parted, but it's back. You can't go back to that. You gotta start walking to that promised land, because that's the only way forward. Stop your complaining and start walking, because you know what? God will provide. God is providing you manna every day, no matter what you think. God knows what you need. So stop thinking about Egypt and start thinking about the land of milk and honey. Now, it's pretty easy to be an encourager. It's kind of a fun thing to do, to be that Ted Lasso. It's like, you can do it. You're great. I like you. So easy to be the nice guy, but the accountability people, it's harder for that to happen. Being the bad guy saying, enough with your complaining. Egypt was miserable. Keep on walking. As a community, we are blessed with both people. And I hope and pray we listen and respond to both those types of voices. Because each person has a God-given gift for us to get us through that desert, to get us through that liminal time, to get us to that place where we achieve that vision that God is going to give us, that promised land filled with milk and honey. So let's keep walking through that desert, people. And by the way, stop complaining.